Arr, grog.
Hey everyone, it's the Sideshed podcast with me, Peter Fickling, and Matthew Weir. Keri's away. She's in Seville, eating her own weight in Iberian pig cheeks. Isn't that right, Matthew?
Yeah, she is. You've seen the photos, right?
One of the pictures Matthew sent me, there's without exaggeration, 12 pig legs hanging over the bar. So it's very much Casa del Warbis, her spiritual home.
Yeah, we get those in the supermarket here. Those nice little carvey stations. In some of them, anyway, in the fancier ones. Mercadona, the Spanish supermarket, there's always someone ready to carve up a pig leg for you.
That's one of the things that's going to be going up in price, apparently. But anyway, let's try. We need to keep all the positivity we've got for this week, Matthew, because what is it? If you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. So anyway, that was a great podcast. Matthew, what's the Twitter, what's the Facebook, what's the Instagram?
So you're saying you didn't enjoy it? I mean, essentially, The Archers this week was The Archers, and everyone seems to have been quite disgusted at that.
Yeah, if I guess they did. It's Ronseal, right? They did what they said on the tin. You got The Archers, full fat, without apology. It was very much The Archers. I didn't enjoy it, but I have been desperately trying to find some positives for today, and if only because all the moans I've said 1,000 times before. And whilst repetition has never been something I've avoided in the past, I was going to try not to be too boring about it today.
Well, with the exception of maybe Monday's episode in the immediate aftermath and the deflation of the fact that the Sunday's cliffhanger wasn't all that.
Yeah.
I found it quite calming this week. It didn't bother me that much. Some of the characters seemed to be going in a loop, and it was very obvious what they were doing with Pip and Josh at each other's throats. The whole succession thing, who's going to take responsibility. David and Ruth have this shock to the system, which makes them, well, David just seems to have gone into some kind of philosophical bubble, hasn't he, where he's questioning everything.
Yeah, he's Disco Dave full time now.
Yeah, Ruth just wants beans on toast. And they're curled up watching, I don't know, Death in Paradise or something on the TV while Pip and Josh are fighting outside in the rain.
Do you think it's the end game for a very long plot that I hadn't even realised was running, where sort of all of this squabbling between Pip and Josh that we've been hearing over the last couple of years actually was leading up to this moment where David and Ruth very kind of dramatically hand over the baton? You know, we got it was a line in the sand this week. It is going to be the Pish and Jop.
That's them.
Yeah, significantly better names in terms of how I think of them. But yeah, Pish and Jop are going to be running the farm now, and we should get used to hearing a different place for David and Ruth in how we hear them.
Well, that's what they've teased, haven't they? But there's also the point where David said Ruth certainly didn't want to give it up. She wanted to be out there in the muck and the rain helping Pip. David was a little bit more chilled about all of that. But the kids said it themselves that they didn't see David and Ruth giving up Brookfield for another 15 years, which caused low-level hysteria on Twitter, the thought that that's going to be happening. But hopefully we're going to have a transition of power over a shorter period of time.
A quick one, please. Because I am interested in the farming side of things. Like the rewilding has captured my imagination. I mean, when Adam first sort of trailed things like, the herbal lay, I was going to, there is a reason why we tune into a rural soap opera rather than, I'm not saying it's and or, you can be a Corrie fan and an Archers fan, but for me it's just the Archers, and there's obviously something about the general alchemy that attracts me. But I think what it is the earnestness. It's when it becomes super sincere, and we'll more of that with Ben and his nursing later. But when they're sort of really taking, that whole episode with the cow, it was just too much for me. It's like, come on, guys, you can't expect us as listeners to care this much about a cow.
No, but it's a metaphorical cow, isn't it? For them pulling together, working together, and maybe that's the future of Brookfield.
I feel the same way about the metaphorical cow as I do about the actual cow.
All of this was spawned from Sunday night's car crash, in inverted commas, accident, with David and Ruth swerving or hitting a deer on the way back from Vince Casey's Winter Blues Party. First of all, Peter, how do you feel about a party hosted by Vince Casey with no Vince?
Ain't no Casey party without a Vince Casey.
Well, he was obviously outside fiddling with David's brakes, I think.
Yeah, that would, because that was it who said that? Was it you or Keri who pointed out that Vince had originally been trailed as a kind of rather sort of
shadowy, almost gangster type figure.
Yeah, ruthless businessman who kind of like operated in the margins.
Look at what we've got. He's got himself under the table at Lower Loxley with Elizabeth. He's planted Beth into Brookfield with Ben, and then he invites the parents up to his house, and mysteriously they have a crash on the way back from the party.
Yeah, but Vince is competent though, isn't he? And if Vince is going to off David's going to be offed.
Well, I felt Iris only popped in to see if there had been any suspicion about Vince's involvement.
I would be over the moon if it turns out that basically Vince was bombed out of Birmingham in the Second World War and went to stay in Ambridge as a young child, and was forced to stay in one of the homes of the Archers, and was so badly mistreated he swore an eternal pact with the devil that he would get his vengeance by any means necessary, providing Satan gave him the means and a life of luxury to go alongside it. And here he is, decades later, ready to reap his cruel and unrelenting revenge on the soon to be destroyed Archers clan.
You're listening, BBC. Kick the agricultural storyline advisor from the payroll. Give Peter the job.
This week's Satan advisor was Peter Ficton. Ham and sausage advice from Keri Borbis. What would you be, Matthew? What would you be?
I don't know. Bad puns. I'll write all of Kenton's scripts.
Actually, you'd be fantastic. I mean, just wheel you in for certain characters. Who would you do? You do Kenton. You would be doing. I mean, you'd be quite useful for a bit of the kind of Lillian and Linda badinage as well. They sometimes go. There's sometimes some cunning wordplay when they're going at it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that could be our correct allocations within the firmament. So there's no Vince at the party.
No.
Iris is giving them the tour. They were originally quite sniffy about what they would expect at.
Yeah, that irritated me. Ruth sort of said what you were saying. She caught herself being a snob and then kind of made a kind of pathetic excuse for it.
Yeah, she said, we'll be complaining about new money next. It's like, well, that's exactly what you've done in the last 4 examples that you've listed. And yeah, Iris was giving them the tour of the I thought she said the Casey Kazi first of all, but it was actually the Casey Kaza, wasn't it? Which I think I may have dubbed it Kaza Casey a long time ago. But anyway, they actually were quite bowled over by the actual venue itself, the house, weren't they? And then there was this whole moment where David's on the way there in the car. He doesn't want to go, does he? Ben's got out of it.
Yeah.
Because he's on his first shift at Borsetshire General the next day, wasn't it?
Is Ben a nurse? Is he a nurse? Oh, okay.
No.
I should mention it more. Sorry. Yeah. So Ben's
it's very subtle. David said he was still hoping he could turn the car around, wasn't he? Because he said, "I can't service the pulsators tomorrow without my full 8 hours sleep." Which is also, I think it's a direct lyric from a Fall song as well. So I think he was just quoting that.
It also sounds like the name of the robots in Flesh Gordon as well.
Yeah.
Flesh Gordon and the Pulsators.
Yeah, that's worth a rewatch. We'll do a double bill, Flesh Gordon and Highlander together.
Yeah. Okay, deal. That actually, yeah, that is locked in. If and when you're in London, that's Charlotte, if you're listening, that's happening. Sorry,
it's a date.
We'll be locked in the front row.
Disappointed with the car crash?
I think everyone was. I mean, so let's be kind about it. You could be disappointed because they'd set up this opportunity for some high drama. That corner of the village has been really quite dull for a long time. Like nothing has really happened, not since Ruth's affair that wasn't. So just from a dramatic point of view, that was a bit of a letdown. It's like, the drama was David and Ruth had 3 days bed rest. and also and Ben gets a chance to shine as a nurse, on camera, on mic.
Which consisted of him putting hot water bottles in their bed.
Oh, yeah, he's very much the mid-table physio of nurses, isn't he? Run on with a spray, and then everyone magically leaps to their feet. But sorry. So that's the kind version. The crueler version is what we wanted: David or Ruth or both to die. That's what we wanted, all of them to have hit one of their children. I mean, when I listened on Monday, I was upset's an unpleasant word. I was disappointed that Ruth wasn't at least in intensive care.
Yeah, it was not that. Oh God, it's a soap, isn't it? But you need drama, don't you? And there hasn't. I fear for characters that I love being written out of it, but I think I would have probably taken one of this bunch just for the sake of a dramatic storyline.
Oh, what is your theory that every soap opera there's a certain amount of blood has to be let to sort of satiate the soap gods? So there's a Nigel has to fall off a roof. It's like
exactly.
It's the sacrifice at the top of the pyramid, and you would even if you don't have anything against David and Ruth, you want it to be spent on this family rather than a miscarriage from Fallon or God, even worse, Jim having a massive stroke and leaving us.
Yeah, and Joe Grundy, there's nothing that could be done there. I found that quite sad when he went, but obviously that was
well done,
beyond.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, it was well done, and it was beyond their control, obviously.
Maybe a lesson to be learnt for them there. Actually, we don't need to have a great big hoopla. People can die in a kind of natural off mic way. But anyway, so,
does that mean that everyone will always be on the Archers until they die in real life?
or no, well, just that they don't need to. If they want to get rid of someone, they can do it in a kind of more realistic way. They don't need to create great big sort of dramatic plot lines for everything,
Well, they did that with Bert. I mean, the actor's still toddling along as far as I know, and I think he was probably getting quite excited when he saw that his poetry was going to be featured in the Harvest Supper and then he was going to be in the Bull. I wonder if they sent him the scripts and then he was like, I don't seem to be in here.
Well, if the actor doesn't like the poetry, imagine that, years and years of having to trot out mediocre poetry. You sort of fundamentally disapprove of it. But anyway.
Who's in the danger stream in the Archers? You said Fallon. I worry about Harrison. I mean, he's not exactly in high-speed car chases.
Do we have to look for logical deaths, or is these are people who would be because basically what you need is someone who's high ticket enough to cause a stir in the audience. So Nigel's a good example, right? Nigel was a big enough character that it's going to really put the cat amongst the pigeons, but not a big enough character that it's going to cause kind of like, he was in one corner of the village, so it didn't have like a kind of domino effect through how they have to write ongoing plots. Like they could just get rid of him and then it's just Lizzie and that family that have to deal with it. So I think you'd be looking at like you said, a Harrison. Who else? Oh, how about Alistair?
Alistair, yeah. Silver Blaze-esque Sherlock Holmes could happen.
They've just boosted him and given him they've just given him a goodbye kebab. So maybe that's it.
That might be what finishes him off.
Exactly.
Who's to say the kebab shop didn't use the deer that it's probably a mysterious venison kebab since David and Ruth Roadkill.
Jakob using all of his horse knowledge to try and stem the sort of the Stygian flow of diarrhea from a rapidly diminishing and dying Alistair dies in Jakob's arms.
And then Jakob's just like, oh, well, okay. Can we do this paperwork, Denise?
How inconvenient. Denise, will you please clear up Alistair?
What were the... Did you catch all the takeaway options? So Alistair had a kebab. Ben had crispy pancakes. Ruth had chow mein. Pip had a dal. Josh had paneer. But it did seem somebody was having fish and chips because salt and vinegar were out as well. So I reckon Leonard, Jill, and David had fish and chips and played it.
There was Leonard was extraordinarily likable this week, wasn't he? He's always likable, but just
he was lovely throughout the whole thing.
When we were sort of writing some very rough notes for what we might talk about today, which is should we call it a method? I think I wrote that Pip and Josh were strangely likable with this week because they are, normally they're quite, antagonizing characters, but this week compared to everyone else, they were incredibly, they're very, very gratefully received. But maybe that's the truth for Leonard. It's kind of like, it's a trick of the eye, because you never see him without Jill or Ruth or David around. Maybe it distorts how lovable he actually is.
He's had a few little highlights, hasn't he? I mean, I felt a bit sorry for him with the living board game pitch last week. And obviously there was the whole thing where he gave Ben the gift of the time capsule. That was him operating on his own. But he was the glue that was holding it all together a bit this week, wasn't he? Making French toast, making fry-ups. Obviously, there's an opening for Uber Eats or Deliveroo in Borsetshire, because the poor bastard had to drive around about 8 takeaways to pick up all their...
We assume it's Rex, don't you? He seems to do every one of those jobs.
Yeah, well, I guess, I mean, if there was an Uber Eats, Rex would probably lean on them, wouldn't he, a bit? Because he certainly didn't like Eddie driving around in the limo. So he'd probably get his heavies in.
Yeah, Rex. I mean, Rex, we've already seen he does have a temper once it goes.
Yeah, Rex and Toby are on an extended holiday somewhere, aren't they? They've chosen to go away, and we just don't know. We haven't heard where.
Toby was back very briefly in the bar, wasn't he? But back to your list of characters we worry about leaving. I mean, my Nigel, because I wasn't upset when Nigel died. Like, I just didn't give a monkeys. It was just like, oh, okay, that annoying fop's gone. It was pretty much how I felt about it. But Russ, Toby.
I think my aunt has just turned the podcast off at that point. I think she considered giving up listening to the Archers after David shoved Nigel off the roof.
I do. I mean, it's horses for course, isn't it? I mean, I don't. I mean, I'm not. I didn't dislike him, but I certainly found the kind of the backlash against the BBC, the Archers team, a bit out of proportion to how I loved the character. But I would be like your auntie. It would if they got rid of Russ or Toby, or for you it would be Jim, Fallon. Some of these characters. Lillian slid down the pecking order for me. I'm now in Keri territory about Lillian. But yeah, if they got rid of Russ or Toby, I'd be like, oh, okay. Anyway, to your point, where are they? And let's have them back, please. And it would have been obvious it would have been a good time to have Rex pop up and Toby pop up to help out with everything that was going on with what's the chops? What's the name? What's the kid's name again?
Rosie.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
She sounds by far the most interesting out of all of the family, doesn't she? She's got a kind of a wrestling character persona routine that she's already got, which was she called the Burp Bomber, who seems to just walk around with her ass stuck out doing fart noises. I was like, give her the farm.
I mean, this is the best thing about having a toddler, is that you don't have to hide your poo and fart based humour under a bushel. You can get out and proud about it.
This whole thing with Iris Casey when she dropped in to see if David and Ruth had clocked whether it was Vince that had cut the brakes. They have this scene now where Leonard and Iris bond over bonsais. Jill is definitely jealous. You can tell from the comments she's making, but then she tries to gaslight everyone afterwards by saying, oh dear, I never meant that, and I didn't mean it like, but everything that she said, I'm Jill, Leonard's friend, and then mentioning to Beth, I don't think she could have sat any closer if she tried. And then when she was challenged on it, she was like, no, I never meant any of that. And I was like, yeah, did you though? I think you did.
Well, she did kind of fess up to it a little bit when Beth, I felt, quite unrealistically confronted her.
No, that bit where Beth said, yeah, I think you did mean to be rude. I was like, you wouldn't talk to someone like that.
Yeah, it was just very, very weird the way that she did call Jill out. You wouldn't call out your boyfriend's, fairly recent boyfriend's grandmother on her being jealous, with your quite bossy, brassy, gran. I don't think you would. Anyway.
No, particularly when she just asked you to hand over a flapjack. You never know what could happen next.
Keri, if you're listening, I hope you appreciated my little bit of pedantry there. You're not, you're lost but not forgotten this week. I was, keeping an eye on some details for you there. Maybe I think that might have been the kind of comment Keri would have made.
Have you got any bonsais around the house?
Yeah, Keri, if you don't agree, please call in or send us an email, hello@thesideshed.com. I wonder if she will listen, Matthew. That's the thing.
She will, of course.
Will she? Yeah.
Yes, she'll listen. Yeah, well, she'll hear. Presumably, you'll send her the edit.
No, yeah, but we should do a Wagatha Christie to test her, see if she does listen or not.
Yeah, we can do that.
Like Rebecca Vardy. So
yes.
Pomegranate, Keri. Pomegranate. That's the test word. Please send us that on the WhatsApp DMs.
This is like Van Halen and the Green M&M, isn't it?
Yeah, no, exactly. Just is that? I'm guessing was that their way of testing that the M&Ms had been separated as requested on their rider?
No, it was apparently they got to the point in the 80s where quite often stagehands, crews, and sometimes even band members themselves were damaged by like rigging, stage setups, etc. I mean, Curtis Mayfield was hit by a lighting rig, wasn't he? That paralyzed him. So they had an entire brief legal document that was really thick pages of A4 that they demanded that every venue and every production company read before they put on a Van Halen show. And one thing they put right in the middle of the document was there'll be an enormous glass bowl backstage of M&Ms, but all green M&Ms have to be removed. And they knew that if the green M&Ms hadn't been removed, that the people hadn't read the document from cover to cover.
I had heard that, but I thank you for reminding me. I completely forgotten about that. That's really cool, isn't it?
Yeah, David Lee Roth said after that the rumor was always that they would trash a place if they found green M&Ms, and he said no. He said we did get angry quite a few times if we saw the green M&Ms and knew that they hadn't read it. He said, but why let the truth get in the way of a good story?
The Wagatha Christie is one of the all-time great. It's a copywriting, isn't it? It's like
didn't she block out everyone from her Instagram except Rebecca Vardy in the end, and then knew that was where she was getting the stories from?
She did it gradually over a series of months. She would release snippets of information to a gradually reducing pool of people, and eventually it was just Rebecca Vardy, and that's how she.
And she did her on the fact that she claimed to have flooding in the basement, and then Rebecca Vardy passed that on to the Sunday People or something.
She has had 3 children, Matthew. I mean, it's it's more than likely. But sorry, it's pathetic. I'm such a pathetic human being.
So way back there, where you were making your Keri setup,
yeah,
I asked, "Do you have a bonsai? Yes or no? Or have you ever had one?"
Yeah, I was too busy. Poking the bear, wasn't I? I would really, really love to get into bonsai. I think it looks absolutely fascinating. There is a tiny kind of squeamishness for, distorting nature like that for your own. But then we all live in great big concrete houses plonked on top of nature, don't we? So maybe that's maybe it's the proximity and the immediacy of it that makes me squeamish. But no, I would love to get into it. But it's one of those things that I know you need to do. You need to be quite patient and also quite on it. And I am neither patient nor on it.
Yeah, we had, my flatmate, I had one. My flatmate in Brazil had a few, but he was forever taking it round to the bonsai clinic round the corner and dropping like the guts of, I don't know, the equivalent of like £100, getting this guy to save its life, which just seemed in the end as like. But what did you think about the comparison? Leonard had to kind of make the decision, not so much with Iris, but it was also almost like his love of bonsais versus his love of Jill in the end, I think.
I would have thought he's the bonsai. He's the one whose roots, his nutrients have been cut off, limiting him and controlling him and leaving him, grateful for this meager sustenance that is provided.
I was going to say, when he has to weigh up his options, one's a spindly, diminutive organism that needs like the right blend of humidity to stay moist, and the other one is R.I.P. Barry Cryer, by the way.
Yeah. Oh,
that's
yeah. But his eulogies have been one of them. I always enjoy the eulogies when the stories come out about what a nice person someone was, and you start to see all the the tales of all the small kindnesses that they bestowed on other people. That's always a very nice little, very telling, side effect. Is rather than going on and on about their professional achievements, everyone's talking about what an amazing mensch he was, and what a good man he was to be around, and what a good mentor. But yeah, I'd much rather have. I mean, ironically, Iris is the big. To extend your analogy, Iris is the big, flourishing, flowering oak with thick, warm boughs. To cool you from the harsh sunlight, and to relax under on a summer's day. Whereas Jill is, as you said, a spindly, gnarled, little sort of wizened creature emotionally. So,
Okay.
was that what you were saying?
Yeah. I mean, also it was just for the sake of a cheap joke, really. But
Well, yes, but this is the problem, Matthew. There's no Keri to leaven us, so the extremes of our personalities are playing out here. There's me, ever pretentious, always looking for some opportunity to waffle on in a kind of self-indulgent fashion, and there's you desperately trying to crowbar in puns.
yeah, I mean,
wordplay gags, yeah.
I was going to ask if you've ever taken a proper walk up to Badger's Bank, but I'll hold off on that.
No, no time for Badger's Banks at the moment. It's all It's just having a 2.5-year-old reduces opportunities for Badger's Banks, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I did think it was strange the way David said he wasn't going to be able to take a walk up to Badger's Bank. He was instead just going to be confined to the laptop, and it's like, that's exactly when I do take a walk up.
Yeah,
when I'm stuck in bed with a laptop.
The technology makes Badger's Banks a lot easier, David, with the program.
Is there another warning going to be on this show this week? I don't think so.
No, I didn't. Oh, yeah, what did you think when you heard my warning? Did you think it was appropriate?
I think it was all right. I think it was probably justified. Yeah,
yeah.
Okay.
I think as when I did the edit, there was about 5 minutes solid of jizz talk, and I was like, yeah, maybe a warning on that one. That was
well. The problem, I mean, the thing with putting a warning in like that as well, isn't it? It's like American TV when the Rolling Stones went on the Ed Sullivan Show and did "Let's Spend the Night Together," and they asked them not to sing the line "Trying to Make Some Girl," so they bleeped out "make," and everyone else thought he'd obviously said "f**k," which gave them a lot more publicity in the States. Because if you bleep out "make," then you're not going to think it was "make," this girl that was bleeped out, are you?
Especially, yeah. The one I really like for that is Joey Deacon, very much our era, from I think it was the early 80s.
Yes.
When one, like 2 schools, like I think in Doncaster or somewhere like that, I think it was up north, they had been making fun of Joey Deacon, and then Simon Green went and said very somberly on air, we've heard that some people have been making fun of Joey, and we just like to say we don't think it's right and it should stop. And suddenly a local problem was nationalised overnight. And we grew up in the era of the Joey Deacon. I mean that's really bad.
Yeah, what they did there was they were really counting on school children to have empathy and to be considerate and kind. And I teach school children. Good luck with that.
Yeah, it does terrify me. You and I are going to have a chat off air about. You're going to have to help me calm down about worrying about sending my wee boy off to school. It does terrify me that that there's going to be 10 years of him potentially coming home in tears from some kind of unkindness that he's endured, or he's been the one inflicting the unkindnesses. Even worse. But come on, there must be a segue we can do from that. Do there, Matthew? Cruel unkindnesses from children back to Brookfield. Maybe Rosie. Oh, sibling rivalries. Pip and what do they call them? Pish and Jop.
Pish and Jop.
Yeah. Last week it was them going at each other, determined to sort of score cheap points and argue about who was top sibling. And this week, they were both wartime generals. They rose at the opportunity and showed what they were made of.
Yeah, they were. While Ruth and David were off at the party, they had trouble with a blocked drain in heavy weather, didn't they? Which a lot of people were speculating on Twitter might be Stefan still plugged down one of the holes in the drain since the flood at Ambridge. Possibly Rob bumped him off, but a few other forensic people have gone back and said that Stefan, even though he disappeared, has been referenced in passing since he returned, was kicking up trouble for Rob and Justin, and then he disappeared again. So I don't think Stefan is down the drain.
All the big Stefan fans out there can rest easy then.
Yeah, all the Steph stands. They can all cool down. Yeah, apparently he's still out there in the shadows. They pulled together. Obviously, they were at each other's throat on Sunday. They're brought together by the accident, and it was just a slow, plodding coming together, wasn't it? And it ends with them. I mean, there was a lot of nice crackling fire sounds this week, which I particularly liked. They found themselves just eating curry and sharing a beer. I mean, Josh, I do balk slightly at this Josh being an entrepreneurial figure when in fact he just has a bunch of laying hens on his parents' property.
I'm not trying to contradict you, but Pip did point out that she's done none of that. She has just followed the path laid out for her by her parents, and he, so if he is trapped by his desire to stay on the farm, work on the farm, and be part of the family business, how entrepreneurial can he be without kind of brining, sort of liters of toxic material into the ground, or kind of, I don't know, building stuff without his parents' permission. I mean, he's kind of limited by his surroundings to some extent. But I very much take your point. It is a bit overplayed, isn't it? He's like the Alan Sugar of Ambridge, the way they talk about it. Yeah,
I mean, he's been through his dodgy farm equipment phase and then doing a runner to Asia when the shit hit the fan with that. I guess Pip, Pip she's towed the line a bit more, hasn't she? Maybe that's more out of necessity than anything else. And she did throw a spanner in the works with the rewilding as well, though, didn't she?
Yeah.
Which seemed to be almost on a bit of a almost vindictive when she did that, I think. And she wasn't quite ready for the fact that Rex and Phoebe were like, okay, draw up a different contract and we'll move on.
Yeah, I mean, that did sort of finish her transition from kind of excitable young adult farmer, kind of like trying on her mum's shoes, kind of like excitable, like her transition to adulthood. She then, it kind of like, it set her personality. And I think for a lot of, it'll take a lot. I mean, obviously that it doesn't mean she's set like that forever, because it's the Archers, right? They'll change a character overnight if they want to. But for the time being, it has made her a kind of slightly awkward, slightly self-involved person in the eyes of the in the eyes of the listeners and the community. So, I mean, maybe this week has slightly done a little bit to push back on that. It's shown a slightly warmer side to her. I don't know.
Yeah, and there was a little bit of, I felt sorry for her for a bit, where it was the talk about whether she would actually find a partner as well. And she said that, who's going to want to marry a single mother farmer, which I thought was it's quite self-deprecating at that point, wasn't it? You don't normally get to hear her very much like that. She's normally projecting, and she was quite inward looking at that moment.
I always get surprised when they're described physically. I don't really think of them physically. So I take it, I have to wait for cues to. I know that for you, Fallon is hot, right? Because you have a bit of a thing for the character and the actress's voice and all this sort of stuff. Is that controversial? I don't feel it is.
No, that's fine. But at times, I've actually quite liked Pip's voice as well. But I've been hounded off Twitter for saying that. So there you go.
I mean, Elizabeth's got an amazing voice, right? So if we're talking about like sexy voices, Elizabeth, I think, has quite a sexy voice. If a little bit too posh for me, but anyway, whatever.
Did you like her when she was a bit more street on that audio I sent you in the week from one of our English textbooks?
Absolutely, yeah. That's that's the stuff. That's worth the Badger's Bank. Trip to Badger's Bank. But Matthew sends us. I think we've mentioned this before, but for those who don't know, Matthew uses a lot of language tapes in his teaching, and it must be produced in Birmingham by the same production team, Matthew.
Well, we've got Brian regularly, we've got Elizabeth regularly, and David. David, even to the point where he plays himself in one of them, where he describes what it's like to be a voice actor, but he's playing characters a lot in there as well. I'm pretty sure. Linda's popped up a couple of times doing kind of northern accents. You said that she's on Postman Pat a fair bit these days, isn't she?
Yeah, she's on the new Pat. Actually, Matthew, what I'll do is, I think we're allowed to use it from copyright purposes, from a copyright point of view, seeing as it's review, but I will pop in the clip you sent us this week so people can hear exactly what we're talking about. Anyway, it's I mean, obviously they have other jobs. We've talked to several of the actors, but it is always weirdly fun to hear them out of context.
1. Have you ever bought something that you've never worn?
Yes, hasn't everyone? I remember some trousers I bought that I never wore.
What was the problem with them?
They were very tight black leather trousers that I bought from a second-hand shop near Portobello Road when I was about 20 years old.
Have you seen the Uber Eats ad with the girl on the sofa that goes through a series of costume changes?
Maybe.
That's Pip, or Daisy Badger, as she's known in real life.
Well, that's the actress, isn't it?
So now you're getting into interesting territory, because the BBC publishes photos of the actors dressed as the characters. So we've gone beyond the point of saying, well, they might not. I know that Keri has that thing where she thinks that Tracy looks very different to Susie Ridds, doesn't she?
I'm 100% with Keri on this. I don't care what publicity photos they release. I don't care what the actors. I mean, let's put it this way: Russ does not look anything like Andenice. Andenice has done a very, very poor job of looking like Russ. Andenice, if you're listening to this, we'll accept your apology in triplicate email, whatever, however you want to send it. But yeah, he does a fantastic job of playing Russ in all ways except for looking like Russ, to my mind.
I think you can turn off what they look like if you want. That's absolutely fine. I find that once I've seen the photo, I find it quite hard to not see them like that. But characters like Jim, for example, I always imagine something slightly different in my head when he's talking as to when when I'm looking at that photo of him on the BBC. But yeah, I mean, all right, so you don't want to imagine. I mean, what you're describing Pip as in your head is what Hannah's press shot looks like. Do you remember Hannah, by the way? She's just disappeared. She went into a pig pen about 36 months ago, and we've never heard from her again.
You assume she'll come back, because she gets the occasional mention, doesn't she?
Yeah, she gets.
She seemed like. I mean, obviously, she was supposed to reawaken Jazz's, dormant romance.
Her last major storyline was being a friend with benefits for Tom when he met Natasha, and they had that awkward crossover.
That was anyway. Yeah. Oh, don't remind me. That was. Yeah. Oh.
Sorry, Peter. You're right there. You went for a minute.
I'm lost for words. I just the thought of anyone wanting to have sex with Tom is just so bizarre. But anyway, I guess people do. Multiple people. Anyway, never mind. I'll just have to get past that. Sorry, everyone. Sorry, Matthew. I just basically yes. I just don't know. I mean, Pip's personality is not enough to have people queuing up at the gate. She's going to have to be pretty damn hot to get people to overlook. Just imagine going on a date with Pip. So it's like, oh, you're ordering that, are you? I don't like that. Oh, I don't like this restaurant. This isn't very good. Have I told you about my daughter? No. Well, I have got a daughter. How are you going to deal with that? Like, it'd just be all about her criticizing, hectoring, nagging before you've even finished a couple of nights together. Anyway.
No, you just think that she'd send any potential suitors packing.
Yeah, exactly. She put them off before, in very short order, is my suspicion.
Yeah, that's what she's saying about herself anyway, isn't it? But not for those reasons.
No.
She's thinking that it would just be her social situation and her job. I don't know. Maybe it's someone within the village. Maybe it's someone we already know.
Maybe it's Rex.
Well, Rex, yeah, it's messy, isn't it? But
correlation is not causation, Pip. The fact that you've worked out why that you are unattractive, but you haven't actually worked out why you're unattractive. That's the next step.
I mean, Peter, at this point, we should probably say that if any of our listeners would be interested in dating Pip, how would they get in touch with us?
hello@thecidershed.com is our email address. This is part of the show that I've just parked as Keri and Matthew's problem, because I always say, I always ask that question. So if you would then want to ask me about Twitter and such like, I have no idea. So,
well, Twitter's been a very shared space this week, hasn't it? With Keri off in Seville, and so me and Peter have hopped in and out of there in between work
stroppily
and
moaning on Twitter. I don't know how Keri keeps up her
yeah,
positivity.
I just went in, dropped a few bombs, and just got out again because it was in between classes, and then like students were starting to talk to me while I was like doing the tweet along. I wasn't working at that moment, so yeah. If they want to get in touch on Twitter, we are at the Cider Shed Pod. That is also our Instagram, where you can see what we're posting up there, and also you can DM us there. And we have a Facebook group, which is called the Cider Shed Podcast. So that's the Facebook group, and you can comment on there, post on there, and you can also DM us there as well.
So, Matthew, this week's been a big old rambly waffle.
What, this or the Archers?
This has been mainly my fault. But I think, as I say very often, we take our lead from the show. So I feel like there is tonally, it's quite sort of true to the, our podcast is often very true tonally or editorially to the content that we're reviewing.
Yeah, so you're basically saying if the Archers was shit, then this will be shit.
Thank you. Yes. Don't blame us, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, I think the first time me and Keri did one together, we'd had a real stinker of a week as well on the
I was
Archers.
over the moon to be away that week. It was
I can't remember what happened, but there was just for the most of the podcast, we were just like, well, what do you expect? What can we do about it?
I mean, because the thing is it is a lot of fun doing the podcast, but obviously it is every week. So, it does sort of like, it does limit your movement a little bit. So it's quite nice to have a week off. But when it dovetails with a terrible week of the Archers, my God, that's a happy feeling. So you've done well, Keri.
Keri, I hope you've enjoyed your break and all the tapas in Seville. Well, not literally. Well, might have been all the tapas in Seville. I've seen the photos. And yeah, she'll be back with us here next week.
Yeah, and I think we should put up one of the more representative photos on our Twitter feed as well, just so that people can see the legs of pig that we were talking about earlier on. And thank you very much, Matthew. Always a pleasure. And have you got a nice weekend planned?
Yeah, out for dinner tonight, back in work tomorrow, and then planning very little for the rest of it.
Lovely. Well, you enjoy that. I'm going to have fondue and then try and relax. So, see you all next week.
See you next week, guys. Bye.